The sun rose lazily over the horizon, casting a warm glow across the small town's bustling main street. It was a picture-perfect morning, crisp, fresh air and the faint aroma of brewed coffee wafting from the cafe on the corner. Life moved at a steady pace here, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else, and the day's biggest excitement might be a stray dog wandering into the farmer's market. But for FBI Director Sarah Ellison, this morning was anything but ordinary. Sarah wasn't just any high-ranking official. Beneath her polished exterior lay a history of grit and determination, a former Marine-turned-investigator who had clawed her way up the ladder. Yet, she remained grounded, holding on to her daily rituals, like grabbing a coffee and chatting with her favorite barista. She was both approachable and enigmatic, a woman who had faced adversity head-on. Today, she drove alone, her black SUV humming along a quiet stretch of highway. Her thoughts wandered to her next meeting, a routine briefing on local law enforcement concerns. The sound of the engine and the rhythmic thrum of tires against asphalt lulled her into a rare moment of calm until flashing red and blue lights shattered the tranquility. "Pull over," crackled a voice over the intercom. Sarah's brows knitted in confusion. She glanced at her speedometer. She hadn't been speeding. Why was she being stopped? She obeyed, steering her vehicle to the shoulder, her heart pounding not from fear but from an eerie sense of unease. The officer approached, his hand resting on his holstered gun. Something about his stance set her instincts on edge. "License and registration," the officer barked, his tone far from professional. When she reached for her ID, she noticed the officer's hand tighten on his weapon. Her FBI badge glinted under the morning sun as she handed it over. "I'm Director Ellison with the FBI," she stated calmly. Instead of de-escalating, her words seemed to fuel his aggression. Before she could react, the officer drew his weapon, aiming it squarely at her. "Step out of the vehicle. Now." Sarah complied, hands raised. She'd faced dangerous situations before, but this was different. She was unarmed, vulnerable, and unsure of the officer's motive. The sharp gravel crunched under her boots as she stepped out, her breath steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "What's the meaning of this?" she asked, her voice even but firm. The officer didn't answer. Instead, he motioned for her to get on the ground. A small crowd began to gather, murmurs rippling through the bystanders as they recognized Sarah. The scene was escalating fast. Suddenly, Sarah's training kicked in. Her eyes scanned the officer, noting his trembling hand and the tension in his jaw. He wasn't just nervous, he was scared. But of what? Or, of whom? From the corner of her eye, she spotted another patrol car pulling up. A second officer stepped out, his expression conflicted. He recognized Sarah immediately. "Director Ellison," he called out, his voice thick with disbelief. "Do you know who she is?" he hissed at his colleague. But the first officer didn't lower his weapon. His actions were deliberate, his eyes darting around as if searching for something or someone. Sarah saw her opening. "Officer, I need you to listen to me," she said, her voice commanding yet calm. "This isn't going to end well for you." The officer's gaze faltered. Seconds later, the second officer intervened, forcing his colleague to lower his weapon. The tension broke, but the damage was done. The crowd was filming, and Sarah's composure was the only thing keeping the situation from spiraling further out of control. Back at the precinct, the incident took an unexpected turn. The officer responsible for the confrontation was taken into custody after evidence emerged linking him to a larger conspiracy. Sarah, shaken but determined, began piecing the puzzle together. Her instincts had been right, the officer wasn't acting on impulse. He was part of a network using law enforcement as a cover for smuggling counterfeit pharmaceuticals. The deeper Sarah dug, the more alarming the revelations became. The operation stretched far beyond this small town, implicating influential figures across the state. As Sarah unraveled the conspiracy, she found an unlikely ally in Deputy Rivera, the second officer at the scene. Rivera, an honest cop with a strong moral compass, had long suspected corruption in his department but lacked the evidence to act. Together, they unearthed a trail of forged documents, secret accounts, and incriminating recordings. But the stakes grew higher. Sarah's investigation put her in the crosshairs of powerful enemies. Anonymous threats flooded her inbox, and her every move was shadowed by an ominous presence. The climax came on a stormy night when Sarah and Rivera confronted the ringleader, a high-ranking official pulling the strings from within the state's justice system. The confrontation was intense, a dangerous game of cat and mouse. Sarah used her intellect and experience, outmaneuvering the ringleader with evidence she had secretly collected. But the victory didn't come without sacrifice. The tension reached a boiling point when Sarah's car was ambushed on her way to deliver the evidence. She narrowly escaped, using her quick thinking to outsmart her pursuers. In the end, justice prevailed. The officer who had pulled Sarah over was sentenced to prison for his role in the conspiracy, along with several others implicated in the operation. The pharmaceutical network was dismantled, saving countless lives. Sarah emerged as a hero, her resilience and determination inspiring others to stand up against corruption. But the story didn't end there. As Sarah looked out over the quiet town from her office, she knew this was just one battle in a much larger war. Somewhere out there, others like her were fighting their own battles, and Sarah was ready for the next challenge.